Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm pretty much excited to have this session with you. I know we are almost at the end of the event, so thank you for bearing with us. So just to start, let me introduce myself. I'm Ivan Nardini. I'm a developer advocate at Google Cloud, working on building content in partnership with Anthropic. And in order to start this presentation today, I just want to ask a very simple question. So how many of you in the last week used any AI tool to code or build application? OK, the majority. How many of you use the same AI tool to build and deploy application on Google Cloud? Yeah, just a few of them. So the goal here today is just try to make it better. So in this demo, what I'm going to show you is how you can use Claude on Google Cloud to build and deploy application end-to-end. And in order to do that, I'm going to wear 5 different hats. And we will start from, imagine the use case, right? Imagine the scenario. You are in an enterprise context. In an enterprise context, you probably have a team like the one that we are visualizing here that it's engaged to build a new feature or a new product. So starting from the left, you probably have a PM. Some of you in this room are PMs. And the PM might have an idea of how to improve a particular product or how to implement a feature. And starting from this idea, he shared this idea with a UI UX design, which allows him to design the idea, to visualize the idea. And after the idea starts getting a shape, then the idea is sent to a software engineer that essentially starts developing the core logic behind this idea in order to ship and make the application accessible or the feature accessible to everyone. And but before to ship it, in order to be confident on what you are releasing, you probably have to pass a security review. So that's why you have a role like the security engineer that will allow you to be confident in the release. And finally, once the application gets released, you probably have a data persona, like a growth marketer or a data analyst, that analyze the data that are collected through the app in order to generate insight and produce feedback to the PM in a way that the product or the feature itself gets improved. So these are kind of all the personas that, in a simple way, we can imagine are involved in the software development lifecycle. Now, with respect to these personas, Claude Code, the Anthropic's coding agent, augment all of them, providing several components that we are going to use today. So, as I said, for the remaining part of this presentation, I'm going to put the hat of all these personas. I'm going to show you how you can use these Claude Code components together with Claude on Google Cloud in order to build and ship a very simple feedback application that at the end of the presentation we are going to use to rate my performance here. But before to start building, of course, you need to set up the Claude Code that we are going to use. And I'm so excited and so proud that we worked together with Anthropic to make this process of setting up Claude Code in order to use model on Google Cloud in a very simple way, in a very straightforward way. So you have multiple methods to use Claude models on Google Cloud in Claude Code, but the simplest one, the faster one, is using the application default credential, which automatically finds your credential, for example, the user one, and based on the environment that you're going to use. And as you can see in this representation, so recently, Claude Code also introduced this wizard that will simply allows you to detect your project and your region where the models are served, and check which models are available in your project, and let you to pin them in order to start building your application. At this point, probably you're familiar with this, and you're wondering, okay, but what is different to use just Claude Code with Claude models? Why using Claude on GCP, on Google Cloud? So there are many reasons why you want to do this. So first of all, because you pay for what you use. So the usage of cloud models on Google Cloud is per token, so you don't receive a message cap. And also, if you're building enterprise application that needs to go to production, you can always access to what is called provisioning throughput, which essentially will reserve some throughput for you in order to build this kind of application. The other important reason why you want to consider Claude on Google Cloud is, as I said, the setup is pretty straightforward using the ADC. You don't have an API to rotate or environment variable to set in some sense. So it's a happy journey with respect to this aspect. You can access model in your project with your own policies set. And also, like, the data stays in your project while you are interacting with the Claude Code. And models are served in multiple regions. So you have global endpoint, you have a regional endpoint, depending on the availability that you need. And as a Google Cloud, talking about availability, we have very great availability service standards that will allow you to use Claude and on one of the most performing infrastructure that you can find in the market. So these are all some of the main reasons why you want to consider Claude on Google Cloud, especially in an enterprise context. So now that you have few reasons of why using Claude on Google Cloud, we are ready to build. And so, as I said, I will start wearing the hat of a PM. So imagine that you just join the company, or maybe you're already part of the company. You have you want to improve our services. You want to implement a new features with respect to a particular product. What was happening in the past is that you have the idea, you go to a UI UX designer, and you ask him to prototype and visualize the idea. Now, with the Claude and Claude Code, what you can do is just drawing a picture like the one that you see here while you're drinking a coffee maybe in San Francisco, and then let Claude implementing the idea for you. So let's see this in action. So this is the Claude Code UI, like you will probably be familiar with that, and you are familiar with the Claude MD, which is essentially gives some instruction. Here we just say that we are a PM, we want to have, starting from the picture, we want to render a prototype of the app, the wireframe, that we are going to then use and pass to the UX designer. And in a few minutes, you can see how Claude was capable of rendering it, and just starting from a very simple picture or drawing that you did while you were drinking your coffee. So pretty straightforward. But imagine how much time you save in doing this, because compared to what you were doing in the past with the back and forth in order to get this first prototype of your idea. Okay, so at this point, the PM gives creates a prototypes and pass these prototypes to the UI UX developer. And at this point, he needs to implement a more solid interface in order to use it in production. So in this particular use case, what we want to create is at least 3 pages, from the landing to the thanking message page, and a dashboard that will allow me to show you in real time what can be the feedback that I will receive from the room. So in this case, there are many ways you can implement this, but in this case, I want to use an additional capabilities of Claude Code, which is the plan mode. So with the plan mode, what we do, we put Claude in a mode where it thinks it thinks and propose what it's going to do before to implement any code. And this is very important because it gives me a degree of freedom of deciding to change something based according to my preference or according to some standard that probably I will get access through an MCP server using Figma, for example. So now that we have in mind what we are going to build, let's see this in action as well. So we started from the wireframe, from the PM, similar prompt. I enabled the plan mode. And so as you can see, compared to before, in this case, I'm simulating receiving some instruction from Figma using a design doc. But as you can see, compared to before, it creates a plan of what it's going to do with respect to all the components that are defined in the slide. We look at them, we are happy, we accept, and Claude Code will implement all of them. And at the end, what we get is this optimized version. So as you can see, we start from here, and we get this. Very, very straightforward. But you can see how we are shifting from a prototype to something that can be used in this session in a very simple way. OK, so this is the part that probably every of you in this room, like you do every day, right? Let's wear the third hat, which is the one of the software engineer. And the software engineer, he received this front end, like all the components that I was sharing you before. And maybe he doesn't know anything, as probably some of you in this room, he doesn't know how to deploy this application on Google Cloud, right? So how you can do that? How you can, have this a clear picture of what are the components on Google Cloud that you need to use in order to deploy a very simple application like the one that I show you today. Luckily, it's not a problem, because as a Google Cloud, we invest a lot of time to integrate with this large byte coding ecosystem that now is growing around models. And in the last few months, we released two important components. So the first one is the developer knowledge API with the associated MCP server. And the second one is the Google Cloud Skills. So with the developer knowledge API, you get access to a fresh documentation from Google Cloud that can be directly consuming Claude Code through the MCP server. And it will have Claude Code to figure it out what is the best architecture, what is the best implementation to deploy a certain application on Google Cloud. This is very important because, again, what we are saying here is that you don't need to know like how to deploy an application on Google Cloud. You can just leverage Claude Code and this MCP server that we expose now on Google Cloud side to build application like this one. So in this case, probably what we are going to do is that we are going to deploy the feedback API on a serverless function like a Cloud Run. We will connect with a web-oriented DB like a Firestore to collect the raw responses that we will give through the feedback app. And then, because we want to have that data analytics part, we will build the implementation in a way that we can store those raw response in an analytical data warehouse like BigQuery. And in BigQuery, we will post-process and we'll consume this information in a dashboard, in a dashboard like the one that you can find in Looker. But again, you can build this using a Claude Code in combination with the MCP server without you having prior knowledge of how to do that. This, like the MCP server and the developer knowledge API that I just mentioned, it got paired with also the skill part. And the skill part is, if with the MCP server, you will be able to design the architecture, with the skills, you will be able to cover the single blocks of this architecture. For example, we release a simple skills that enable Claude to deploy on Cloud Run, to deploy an API on Cloud Run, or to connect like Cloud Run with Firestore. So it's more about the implementation itself rather than giving the overall picture. So once you get Claude Code enabled with the MCP server of the documentation and the skills that I just mentioned, you can just directly implement the architecture that I was showing you before, and you can do this in parallel. So another component that you can use in Claude Code is a sub-agents. And as you can see here, we are going to spin up 3 different sub-agents, one for the API, one for the ingestion pipeline, and the other one for the dashboard. And you can parallelize the implementation of each of these components, just like you run a team sprint in your normal, usual development life cycle. So let's see this in action as well. So here we are again. First of all, I just want to show you that we have enabled the MCP server of the documentation, and we have the skills, some of the skills that we pre-built. One time more, I provide a very simple prompt. The first step is designing the cloud native backend. So it will it will provide me draft of the architecture. In this case, I could use, again, the plan mode, but for simplicity, I didn't. And then you use the skill, one of the skills that I provide in order to implement the API. Let's say that we are happy with the API spec, then we have the architecture, we have the API spec. The next step is running multiple agents in parallel in order to implement the three components of the app that I was showing you. So it's pretty quick. As you notice, Claude Code, it also managed the testing part after you finish the implementation, and at the end, you will get your app, which is now ready to deploy on Google Cloud. Okay, so at this point, we have the code of the app that is ready to be deployed. But because we are deploying on cloud and we want to open this up to a larger audience, we want to deploy it in a confidently. So this is when you want to consider to run a security review. Now, depending on your company, you can have different security requirements. So, for example, you may want to check if your application is solid with respect to the most common OWASP issue, or because you are deploying this application on cloud, and one thing that you need to consider is probably you will use what is called a service account, and you want to limit the service account when it calls a particular API, like the one related to reading and writing a DB, with respect to certain role. So you're sure that you are limiting what it can happen when the application runs some operation on the cloud itself. So again, these are just a couple of examples of what you want to consider in a phase like this one. And of course, this representation is a strong simplification of what can happen in the real life. It's just one of the possible scenarios that you can have. And you can see why it's also a simplification, because we are letting the security engineer not only to approve if the app is secure enough to be deployed, but it will also deploy the app in this case. But again, this is just a demo, so we have this degree of freedom. With that being said, let's run the final demo, and let's get the app running. So in this case, as you can see, I use a pre-built security review that you can find in Claude Code. Very simple prompt also in this case. And what is happening is Claude Code ran the first test. Essentially, he double-checked that everything is aligned. He found a possible issue, and he automatically fixed it. So in a way that the app now is secure. And once it is secure, it deployed the backend API, and it deployed the API itself. So what we get at the end of this, it's an endpoint with our app. The app is live, so I will quickly unlock my laptop, and I will ask the backstage to share on my laptop. So the app, as you can see, is up and running on GCP. For people that doesn't know GCP, this is Cloud Run. It's a serverless service that you can use in order to deploy app. And the app at the end looks like this one. So if you remember, I show you the original, I show you the feedback frame at the beginning. So what we can do now live, I can just give me a score. What do you think the session is going so far? Give me 5? Oh, okay, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Okay, cool session. Let's be simple. I submit, and then in real time, it updates the number of response, the score, and the visualization. And also, just for fun, I build a feedback analyzer. So once I click this, it will run. It will call Claude on Google Cloud, and based on the feedback and the comments that you send, it will generate this summary. So pretty straightforward. I will ask to go back on the presentation. Thank you. OK. So at this point, we have the app. We collect good feedback. Thank you again, man. But the development lifecycle is still there. We have the last step to cover, which is essentially people there start using our app. If you saw, one of the KPI that I had on the dashboard was the response time. So how long was taking you to just like providing a feedback. So these are the kind of information that you can use in order through this data, you can collect this data, analyze them, and generate insights in a way that they can be used in order to improve the application. Now, if you're new on Google Cloud, there are several services that you can use in order to analyze this data that comes from the app. So a couple of them, one, as I said at the beginning, is an analytical data warehouse, which is BigQuery. And for the reporting part, you have a tool like Looker. But again, as we said before, you don't need to know how to use BigQuery in order to analyze those data, as well as how to build a dashboard in Looker, because we also provide an MCP server for doing this. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to demo how to use an MCP server to query BigQuery or building a dashboard, but I want to quickly share with you where you can find this information in order to do that after this session, because we are going to release the code. So I will ask to shift back on my laptop. Thank you. So, OK. Loading time. So with respect to all the MCP servers that are available on Google Cloud, we recently announced the agent platform. So in the agent platform, you have services that is represented by the agent registry. And in the agent registry, you have the list of all the MCP servers that we natively support on Google Cloud. So for example, we have the developer knowledge service that I just showed you. And we also have the BigQuery MCP server that you can use in order to query the data that we just collected from the app. It's this registry is relevant because it tells you how to set the MCP server on your side, as well as it gives you some observability feature and the description of all the tools that you will find for the MCP server. So you know how Claude Code will be able to use this server to query your data. With respect to the Looker part, also we released the MCP toolbox of DB. This is an open source, like a model context protocol server, which include an integration with Looker. And it's very well, we have a very well documented quick start on how to set up with the Claude Code and start using it in order to consume that data from BigQuery and build your dashboard. So I leave you this as an exercise. We are going to release the code, so you can go home and integrate these two parts. It's pretty straightforward, but the dashboard that you can create, they are pretty powerful, and you will see how nice they can be. Okay, back to the presentation. I think I'm just in time, so time to wrap up. What I try to explain you today is essentially two things. So first of all, I was trying to, and I hope I did good enough. I was trying to show you how all the components of Claude Code, including skills, MCP server, sub-agents. They can really like speed up the process of software development, as well as how you can use Claude Code with cloud models on GCP in a very seamless way. Like if you saw, we ran several sessions across like multiple personas, and like it was the experience was just straightforward. It was just incredible. So this is what you can get if you combine Claude Code with cloud models on GCP. As I said, the code is going to be available right after the session. We have a great quick start, and we have a very well maintained documentation, both on Google Cloud side and Anthropic side. So I highly recommend to just go there and check out. And then I hope I cover everything, but if you still have questions or you want to provide additional feedback, just feel free to reach out. These are my social media points. So with that being said, thank you so much, and it was a pleasure being here today.